Welcome back. President Trump doubles down on his demands for a border wall as he calls on Democrats to restart negotiations on funding the government past February 15th. A new number of House Democrats appear to be supporting the idea of at least a vote on wall funding. One of them joins me right now, Utah Democratic Congressman Ben McAdams. He's a member of the House Financial Services Committee and the Blue Dog Coalition. Congressman, it's nice to have you on the program this morning. Thanks so much for being here.
Thank you, Maria. Good to be with you.
So you were among 30 House Democrats who sent Nancy Pelosi a letter urging her to give Trump a vote on the wall funding. Tell me what you think would come out of that vote.
You know, first and foremost, what the purpose of that letter was to say that the shutdown is doing no good for anybody. We're harming the U.S. economy. We're risking a recession. We're harming the federal employees who are just working to put food on the table. And let's open the government. There are processes in the Congress, in our government, laid out by the founders to have debates like this. That's what Congress is intended to do. So let's open the government, and then let's have this negotiation. The president has a proposal that should be heard in the Congress. We should debate it. And then we should work to build common ground and try and move forward a solution on border security, on immigration reform, and let's go through the proper channels of the Congress that are built and intended to have this exact conversation. But let's not do it in the context of a shutdown that harms the American people, that harms our economy, and risks the pocketbooks of every American.
What I'm trying to better understand is really the makeup of the new Congress, because of course we know that there's a pocket of Democrats who just want the president out. And much of it is politics, and they are resisting anything that he would like. We know that Nancy Pelosi and many of her colleagues voted for a wall and voted for wall fencing years ago many times. We know that there's a wall right now, a border wall in Nancy Pelosi's own state of California, separating Tijuana and San Diego. But because President Trump has the idea, it's resist, resist, resist. So you come from a red state. You beat out your opponent on the Republican side. Do you think there's a movement within your new Congress to actually get things done, putting politics aside and not necessarily resisting everything the president says because you don't like his personality?
Absolutely. You know, there are a lot of me and my colleagues who were elected this last year. A lot of us are just pragmatists who just want to get something done. Before I was elected to Congress, I was a mayor. And mayors just have this attitude of, okay, what can we do to move forward, to solve the problem? As a Democrat in a very red state, I never got anything done unless I could reach out and build bridges across the aisle. So as long as the debate is focused on, you know, as long as we're defining a win is meaning somebody else loses, we're never going to have consensus. So we've got to find that win-win. And I don't know at this time what the that win-win looks like, but we have to find it. And I know that a lot of my freshman colleagues are moderates who want to find that win-win. That probably we should look at some things to address immigration reform, and Dreamers, I think, is something important, permanent protections for Dreamers, but also border security. As a mayor, I saw illegal drugs and the impacts of that in my city, and I want to do more to stop the flow of illegal drugs into the country. So I think there's a lot of common ground, and I think the way to approach this, and the way that I would approach it if I was mayor, is to say, you know, there's a conversation, a debate about wall or no wall. Let's step back from that conversation where it's divisive, and let's talk about what we have in common. Let's find that thread of commonality amongst Republicans and Democrats. I think the thread of commonality is we all want to protect the border. We can find common ground on that. So in some places that's going to mean technology, other places, in other ways, immigration reform, and in some places it may mean a barrier. And I think if we step back and reframe the conversation about protecting the border and what can we do and what's the most effective way to do that, instead of debating a wall or no wall, let's debate border security, and I think there's a lot of common ground.
Yeah, I think you make a lot of good points, because there are areas of the country where they're wide open, and perhaps maybe you don't need an actual fence or wall there, because you can use technology and drones. They're wide open areas that if illegals come in, you can actually apprehend them easily because it's so wide open. But then there are other areas, like the wall we've been looking at in Nancy Pelosi's state, separating Tijuana from San Diego, where you have a very dense population, 3 million people on one side of the wall in Tijuana, another 3 million people on the other side of the wall in San Diego. So what is your thoughts in terms of how much is needed for actual barrier on the southern border? And will you vote yes for wall creation and more wall extension of what we're seeing in this picture?
So what I've tried to do is not draw any lines in the sand. I want to vote to have border protection, to have border security, to reduce the flow of drugs and even illegal immigration.
But you said part of that may include a barrier.
Sure, I wouldn't rule out barriers in places where it's appropriate. I think that's acceptable. But let's have this conversation in the context of committee hearings at the Congress with the goal of finding common ground. I also think one of the things we can do to protect the border is to reduce illegal immigration by fixing a broken immigration system. If we can make sure that those good people who are just looking for a job, our economy is asking to bring in workers, let's make it easier for them to immigrate legally, so they're not tempted to cross the border illegally.
Sir, do you feel
I think
like
part of the border protection strategy has to be fixing a broken immigration system, our laws.
Do you feel that you have a voice? I mean, I know that you did not support Nancy Pelosi's bid to become the Speaker for a second time. Do you feel like you're being listened to? Will you have the influence with these practical ideas that you're putting forth?
I think so. I mean, we're just getting up and going as a Congress right now. I've been pleasantly surprised at people both on the Republican side and even more progressive on the Democratic side who I felt that my voice is welcome. Let's hope that as we go into this negotiation, people can allow all voices to be at the table. Some of the pragmatists can, on both sides of the aisle again, can really push for common ground and trying to find that solution that will really garner a majority of support in Congress and help us to reopen the border.
Yeah.
I'm somebody who, we're going to have disagreements from time to time, but once one disagreement's behind us, we move to the next issue. We try and find common ground, and we don't carry baggage forward from debate to debate. And that's how I'd go into this, is saying, look, we've got that behind us. Let's move forward and find common ground.
There are other disagreements that are also radical on the economic side of things. You're on the Financial Services Committee. What are your thoughts on Elizabeth Warren's idea to confiscate income, to put a tax on overall assets and wealth, or Alexandria Ocasio's idea of having a 70% tax rate for the top earners?
Well, I think I've jokingly said before, if people think that there are only two political parties in this country, watch the Financial Services Committee over the next several years. You're going to see a broad array of people across the political spectrum. You're going to see someone on the more progressive side, like Representative Ocasio-Cortez. Myself, who's a moderate, a centrist that believes in the power of business and markets, properly regulated, of course, to make sure that there are protections for consumers and individuals. That the power of markets can really do a lot of good, and has done a lot of good in this country.
Will that force high earners to hide income where you won't get the revenue anyway? Will it change behavior in terms of philanthropy? What do you think that does to an economy if you see those kinds of tax rates, 70% and a tax on assets and wealth?
I'm not convinced that a 70% tax rate is the way to go. Anytime you have, tax policy drives behavior, and so that's not a direction I think we should go in as a country. We should look, what behavior are we trying to drive, and what is good for the American economy and good for the American people.
Congressman, you make a lot of good points. We so appreciate your time this morning. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Maria.
Congressman Ben McAdams there.
Senator Elizabeth Warren announcing a new wealth tax on the ultra-rich. This is her idea, campaign idea, which would be 2% added on top for Americans with more than $50 million in assets. Warren saying in a fundraising push, quote, "A lot of rich and powerful people won't like it, but I don't work for them." A new Fox poll shows that many Democrats think that socialism is a good thing. 40% say they think socialism is a good thing. 34% said that it was a bad thing. Here now, Chris Stirewalt, Fox News politics editor, and Wendy Osefo, a political and social justice commentator. Good to have both of you with us. Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Wendy, let me start with you. What does that number say to you? Do you find that number disturbing, or do you think it's something that's a good place for Democrats to look when they're putting together their policies for 2020?
Well, I think that Venezuela, North Korea, even China has shown us that socialism is not necessarily the way to go. But what people are looking for is the utopian ideologies that underlie socialism. That is, they want that, human beings don't want for anything, and that we have equality. And I think that that's what Warren is trying to say here. Her approach may not necessarily be the best, but a Gallup poll also showed that, most millennials don't even know what socialism really is. So I think that that's another issue here, is that when people are talking about socialism, socialism. They're thinking about the ideologies that speak to it, but not necessarily what it will take and how it could turn a government on its head. But what cannot be lost in the conversation is the fact that when we have individuals who are not making any money and then others who are billionaires, and that is a problem, especially in our great nation, which is supposed to be the leader. So that is the biggest issue.
I think it's an interesting point. I mean, I think a lot of people on all sides of the fence agree that income disparity and how exaggerated it has become is probably not a great thing. But that's a long way away, Chris Stirewalt, from deconstructing capitalism and the economy that has been so prosperous for the United States and exchanging it for something that looks like Venezuela, which frankly looks a lot worse than not so good. It looks disastrous and catastrophic.
Right. Now, what Warren is proposing would be very popular with the general electorate.
Absolutely.
A big tax on very rich people is always popular.
Over $50 million.
Over $50 million, they like it. And guess what our poll also found is that when you get over about $250,000, tax increases on the wealthy get quite popular. Remember, Donald Trump got elected president because he was a populist. The energy in the country right now is populist energy. It's eat the rich. It's against entrenched, powerful people. Elizabeth Warren's trying to get in on that. However, and this is the real danger that Democrats face now, if they allow their party, no matter who the nominee is, I don't think they're going to nominate Elizabeth Warren, but if whoever the survivor is.
Who do you think they're going to nominate, Chris?
I'd say the
Kamala
one to beat
Harris.
right now, is Kamala Harris is the one to beat right now. But for Democrats, if they're branded, if the eventual nominee is branded as a socialist or branded in this way, if they allow the Republicans and Donald Trump to define them as that, then they got no shot because they need to make the election about Trump.
Yeah, let's put up the people that are declared so far and the people who have announced exploratory committees. I think it's very interesting that the two of you both said Kamala Harris is the one to beat here. Wendy, why do you say that?
I think Kamala Harris brings a new, fresh set of energy to the Democratic Party. I think that she speaks to all of the marginalized populations that Donald Trump has just really outed during his presidency. She is a daughter of immigrants. She's a female. She's a minority. She just speaks to so much of what people need right now in that new energy. I do think that some people have touted a Biden-Harris ticket and what that will look like. I will actually flip that on its head and say a Harris-Biden ticket, where Harris is the president and Biden is the VP. But
He's done it before. He knows how to do that job.
Absolutely. And not to mention, she's my sorority sister. So, she has everything that we need to be the president of the United States of America.
5 seconds, Chris. Quick thought.
Happy Friday. Glad to be with you.
All right. Thanks, you guys. Good to see you both.